these past couple months have had to ramp up with campaigning, like normal, right before an election.
Right.
So how has campaigning been, and how has it been being out and talking to people?
Well, so much of what I do in campaigning, the work I do every day is part of campaign. What I don't see it as campaigning, I see it as doing the work. And people are able to measure what I've been able to do, and then they can overlay that in terms of campaign. So I think it makes all the sense in the world when you look at what set of conditions that we have prior to my coming into office, and what set of conditions that we have prior to my being on the commission, for example, because this has been not just a 4-year process with me. It's been a 12-year process in being on the commission. The 8 years prior to being elected mayor, then added with the 4 years having been mayor. And while in my head, in my thoughts, the work of campaigning is very much associated with, are you improving the quality of life for citizens based upon the set of responsibilities that you have? Are you making things better than they were before you came in? Are you trying to create the same conditions for every citizen that you have in the city of Dayton that you would like to have if every citizen were a member of your family? So whether kids are your kids or cousins or nieces, or whether the adults are your cousins or brothers or sisters or whatever the case may be, that's the way I look at that. And I also look at this in terms of what do we need compared to some decades ago, being a citizen of Dayton, growing up as a young person, being involved in heavy recreational opportunities, being involved in Boy Scouts, being involved as an explorer, Cub Scouts, being a newspaper boy, looking at the conditions and how they change and how you have to adapt and have to change to the needs of the citizens that you see is going about their everyday life.
And in that, as you say, you're out in the community doing the work, but what are some of the issues that you've heard come up for voters and or issues that maybe are specifically important to you?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that's really important for me, as I mentioned before, and being involved in government relations for, again, 25 years working with the school system, is you're always trying to improve the quality of life as far as needs are concerned, as far as your community. As we worked back in the mid-'90s, early '90s, with a lawsuit, for example, against the state of Ohio because of the unconstitutional underfunding of schools, and being on the steering committee that filed a lawsuit against the state of Ohio for unconstitutional funding, and then having that, winning that case, having the case reversed at the appellate court, and then going to the Supreme Court to have the case reversed again in our favor. And I say our favor of the 1.8 million children that we have in the state of Ohio. And then seeing the work that's being done, or that was done, in terms of building all schools throughout Ohio, and being clearly a major part of the $528 million project to build all new schools here in the city of Dayton. And that's special, and made a big difference for them, made a big difference for this community as well. Because not only was it something that benefited the young people in terms of having new schools, working with labor and getting labor involved so that the resources that they were able to generate because of doing that work, and the benefit of working with a project labor agreement with them, and them meaning the labor because I was school board president at the time, and helping to move the school system together with the community, and to have much of those dollars that we got from the state to build new schools stay right here in the Dayton community by working with those local labor leaders in that space. And then looking further down the road in terms of working consistently with improving school funding options, and not knowing that I was going to be in a position to be mayor back during that time, and how preparing young people to be in a position to transition from being an adult, from being a youth to being an adult, and being able to either go to college, go to the military, or go into the workforce, or any one of those combinations, is a godsend for me as mayor. been involved with all these different functions, if you will, for the decades, has created me to be the best suited person in this space. And to look at the endorsements that I've gotten from our fire and safety forces, from our union leaders, again as well, also from the schools, the leaders of the school district, the Dayton Education Association, because they know my work. They've known my work from the past. So when you talk about campaigning, I think about just doing the work and talking about that. And when I talk to the business leaders in terms of why I have their support as well, because we've been able to create the conditions for more and more outside investments to come into the city of Dayton. So I put all those things together and do the best I can in improving the relationships and maintaining the relationships with those individuals who are in positions to support bringing more and more millions of dollars and billions of dollars into this community.
And I know that, you just talked about youth quite a bit and the changes with the school system and the district. So because you've been in a leadership role for a while.
Long time.
Long time. What are some of the things that you see? And like you said, things change with what the community's needs are at that point in time, which shifts. So what are some of the things that you feel like at this point really need to be honed in on or worked on, or maybe have the community needs have changed recently for?
Well, I think it's always, we should keep our eye on the prize. Economic development is foundational. And even as I talk to young people and trying to help them understand how to move from a young adult set of values to an older adult set of values. When you raise the median income, in those cities, again, who have the highest median income, have the highest quality of life, then having conversations with them about what does high quality of life look like. And you start talking about those things: great education, great recreation, job opportunities, and clearly safety. Those are some of the foundational things that every high quality community has. And making sure that our young people can identify with those things and then be able to function within that scope. And help them understand that when they come out of the school, that they're prepared to, like I said before, go to college, go to the military, or go into the workforce, or either one of those combinations. And then helping more and more of our adults understand that we have a responsibility to help create those conditions. Because those conditions that we create are the kind of conditions that we want to create if every child in this community were our own, if every adult in this community were a cousin or a brother or sister or someone of that like, or grandparent. And when we function with that type of lens, and understand there's a mayor, I have to be a mayor for the entire city. And I have to be a mayor that understands the needs and challenges and wants of everyone that we have in our community. And have to make sure that, to the best of my ability, with all the support systems that I have, to communicate to them what's working for them, what are some of the deterrents, what are some of the kinds of things that really benefit us as far as jobs are concerned. And one example, looking at, for example, the jobs that we have coming in from from Joby Aviation, Sierra Nevada, the On Main project, and how we had to be prepared for the workforce that is needed. We have to help our developers understand that we need help from them in terms of building homes, not just for the existing citizens that we have, also for the homeless, but also for the individuals that we want to attract to be able to take these jobs and to keep the dollars and the salaries that they're going to make in those positions right here in the city of Dayton.
And speaking on the public safety part, the city has invested quite a bit of money in DPD with upping technology. A new temporary and permanent police station is coming downtown. And I know that there's been an emphasis with violence reduction and bringing in cure violence and things like that. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to touch on the public safety part and tying in youth, and to your point that it's on adults as well to understand that it's our job to prepare youth for a healthy adult life?
This is such a multifaceted question, such a multifaceted set of answers, if you will. Clearly, we, as we deal with some of the questions that you specifically asked, I'm glad you've been paying attention, okay? Because we have created that real-time crime center. We have had increased the 2 police training recruit classes, if you will. And then we also have been able to, with our fire department, increase the work of more and more of our young people coming out of that space to be in a position to be a fire person. And for the first time ever in the history of Dayton, Ohio, we have 2 African American females who are now firemen. Those things are significant. And we've also been able to increase the number of women and minorities in both our police forces as well as our fire department. So those things are foundational for us because people like to see people who look like them in key and critical positions. And so we've always had our eye on diversity, even with the hiring that we're doing through our HRC department and beefing up that department and working in partnership with the county as well as with the Chamber of Commerce, in those spaces as well. So that's foundational. The work that we're doing right now in terms of some of the rises or increases that we have in some of the violent situations, this last year, those crime stats have gone down. All those negative things, while they're still in a position to still bother us, because one death, one gunshot, one loss of life is one too many. And dealing with some of the losses that we've had has still been devastating, even though those numbers have gone down for us. Shows that we're at least doing things a little bit better. We have people who are more engaged in understanding that crime is not the vehicle that they should use to solve their problems. And then taking that lead and seeing that, I've been able to work with the county and work with our police and fire and other community members to put something in place to identify and train some of our young people who are 13 to 16 years old on how to identify and resolve conflict and be able to train those young people to be engaged in a process that helps them understand the reduction of crime is their responsibility as well as anyone else's. And that to look at situations where I need them to help me train younger people in those spaces so that we can change the whole culture about violence in this entire community. And when we looked at why we want to use Cure Violence Global, it's because that organization, that international organization, has been proven to reduce violence at a minimum of 20% in every city that's been activated in. So that's special for us. But then our piece goes further than just going in to interrupt violence and going into trying to stop it from that perspective. The piece that I just mentioned before is getting more and more of our young people engaged in identifying and resolving those conflicts before they increase to the level of violence, rage, and conflict.
So, when you've been out doing your work and speaking to people in the community, there's a lot going on the federal level, also the state level, all of that trickles down into local governments. Do you feel like there is engagement? Is the community engaged with the local process of government right now, or are people just fatigued and kind of worn out with everything going on, particularly at the federal level?
Well, it's all of the above. I've worked at every level in terms of looking at those spaces, in terms of what's happening, and of course, being a mayor, being able to work with some of our federal legislators to bring dollars back to help us with major projects that we have in the city of Dayton, like the Boys and Girls Club, the investment with the On Main project, the investments with money helping with the Right project, Right Factory, the investments again up and down 3rd Street, all over the city of Dayton. So working in those spaces, the federal money that we received, of course, dealing with the ARPA funds. So we have a lot of things that have been moving us in the right direction because of the partnerships and relationships that we have at these different levels. Now, we're always fearful whenever time there's some conversation, some discussions about people doing something differently. Different doesn't always mean good, okay? So change clearly is not always good. We used to talk about the situation that change is inevitable, but improvement is optional. So again, clearly they're not necessarily linked that change is always going to be good. We've been going in the right direction here in Dayton for the last, I know under my leadership, the last 4 years, and more specifically looking at things that we put in place foundationally even before that. Passing the first tax increase in 32 years, as we did in 2016, by 56%, and then coming back and passing the renewal tax levy increase in, not an increase, but a renewal in 2024 at a 76% rate. That's important because when people saw that we did what we said we were going to do with the initial dollars in those spaces, and then we follow up and say, okay, here's what we did with what we said we were going to do, and they say, thank you very much. And they say, okay, now we'll do a little bit more. So we're going to give you some more money and see if we can do the same thing again. That's special. That's more than special, because passing tax increases and levies is not an easy task, especially when your community is being challenged by a lot of other financial responsibilities. Now, I know it's a long answer for your question, but when I look back at what's happening at the federal level, some of the uncertainty that's caused by different positions of different leaders are not always met with logic, okay? And the last thing we need to have as we go through this process in terms of mayorship is a change in leadership in this direction, because we have been demonstrating how beneficial it is for the strong, dedicated, and leadership that we've had, consistent leadership that we have since I've been on the City Commission. Now, being in a position to accomplish issues and respond to all the issues doesn't always mean that you agree with everyone who brings a situation to you. You know, we can go back and look at the healthy lifestyles, for example, that we've been trying to push throughout this entire city, with the different urgent cares, the different type of situations, the different hospitals that are popping up throughout the city of Dayton, help to minimize some of the challenges that we experience because of losing a good Sam. And the work of putting something in place of that nature, so it goes against what national trends are saying. That national trends are saying we want to have more options in terms of healthier lifestyles. We want to have more young people understand their responsibility to keep their body in shape. We want to have more adults understand our responsibility to create conditions for them to be in those spaces as well. And so we continue to look at all the needs that come to our citizens and the challenges and the supports that come from our federal and sometimes local government as well.
I just want to touch on this because it's obviously a very big story right now. Tomorrow, SNAP benefits may not be paid out to people. And again, this is a federal decision that has to be worked out. But it's going to impact people here locally. And I've been out in the community, and there's the food bank and food pantries and churches and a bunch of people in the community that are working to prepare and step up for the need that might arise from this. So, you know, if reelected and things kind of continue on this route or drag out, this might be a really challenging time for a lot of people. So how on the local level then do you work to make sure that Daytonians come out of this as good as possible?
Well, the work that, the question that you're asking is one that we demonstrated that we've been able to handle. Okay, you looked at what happened with COVID, because we knew that COVID was happening in a situation where many of our African American citizens were more skeptical about getting vaccinated, and many of them were not being in a position, or were not in a position where they could go feel comfortably about where they can go and get a vaccination or vaccine. We looked at having those conversations at the federal level, state level, and making sure we got at least a 25% increase in terms of the availability for vaccinations in the West Side. So our church is very much engaged with us. They helped us a lot in terms of that situation. We also had weekly calls, Zoom calls to talk with them, to listen to whatever conversations they had or thoughts, or whether they should have church inside, or whether they should have church outside, or whether they should have more and more church, if you will, on Zoom. And so all those kind of conversations that we had right then is a demonstration of how responsive we have been and we will be in terms of addressing the needs of people. So I've already had calls out with the food bank and others to talk about and invite others to be engaged in some of these conversations, again, to increase the awareness of what's happening as far as the city of Dayton is concerned, and to let people know that we're going to come together to try to minimize situations for anyone to be in a situation where they're hungry. This should not be here in 2025 to have people in the city of Dayton hungry.
I will just wrap up by letting you kind of take the floor and say, you know, is there anything that you want to say kind of last minute to voters right now?
Well, I'd say the same thing that I've said for decades. Okay, I'm Jeff Mims. I've been involved in service throughout my entire life as far as the city is concerned. I'm a Vietnam vet. I'm a former teacher, former coach. I've been a government relations person. I've led major projects throughout this city and also throughout the state of Ohio in terms of school funding, in terms of building school facilities, in terms of fixing roads, passing tax levies, not just here in the city of Dayton for the city, but again, passing school levies as far as my work in the school system. You know, levies in 88, 83, 92, and the last one I was leading on was the one we passed in 2008. So doing that type of work is required that you spend a lot of time behind the scenes. You just don't go out and say pass a levy. You work with organizations, you work with businesses, you work with citizens, and you let them see and ask the questions. Okay, how is this going to benefit me? How is, for example, issue 9 going to benefit me? How is issue 6 going to benefit me? We talk to them and we explain to them, okay, supporting roads on a recurring basis throughout the city of Dayton. And while we still have potholes, you know, and I explain to them, the only way for us to not have potholes is that once we fix the street, you don't drive on it anymore. Okay. Now that's not a realistic solution, but we have to do this on a reoccurring basis. That's why we have some technology situations where you use your app. You go on your phone, Dayton delivers, and we'll try to get to a pothole within 48 hours if you send us that information. We look at what we're doing in terms of supporting our police and our fire. Again, having 2 recruit classes as opposed to 1 every year to increase the presence of our police, not only in downtown, because it's our economic engine that we have to make sure we keep that safe, but also helping people understand how it's necessary to have safety conditions and the presence of our police in our neighborhoods as well. The great work that we always are doing with our fire department, because they're everybody's favorite in terms of what's happening in those spaces. And again, I think I mentioned having 2 African American firemen for the first time ever in the city of Dayton. But explaining to people how the work that we're doing downtown benefits everybody in the entire region. The work that we're doing in terms of the city, and even though there may be some conflict with regards to how we arrive at a solution to make things happen, we have demonstrated results of the improvement that we've been able to create for the citizens of Dayton. And that's so foundational in terms of that process. And I say that because that's been my life's history. It's been my life history working in those spaces, again, even as a union leader, moving our membership from 68% to 98% during the time that I was elected and working in those spaces, improving graduation rates for our young people in those spaces, and also making sure that they felt fun by coming to school. So the attendance rate even increased during those time frames as well. And then looking at how we have worked with the local universities, Wright State, UD, Central State, Wilberforce, and even Sinclair, have been positioning us to be in a better spot, if you will, to train more and more of our young people in these aviation-related jobs that we have. And so looking at Joby Aviation and then the air taxis that we have in that space, 2,000 jobs, and again looking at Sierra Nevada and another 1,000 jobs there, doing aircraft maintenance on military planes as well as the regular planes that we have that interact as far as the city of Dayton is concerned. Those things are important because we're having these direct connections between local schools and my youth summits that I have with all our young people in the city of Dayton, where for the last 4 years I've had at least 25 kids from each high school come to my youth summit, and they have conversations with those who've been involved in therapy, because we have some of these challenging mental health issues. That's the number one session that young people sign up for. Then we have sessions dealing with jobs and careers, civic engagement, as well as how to mentor your younger peers. So those are all a part of the main focus that I've been able to put on our young people as far as my mayor's leadership is concerned. And they're paying off. They're paying off. They will continue to pay off because, as I mentioned before, that's going to be a big part of my whole peace campaign is the peer-to-peer teaching and coaching from our young people who are closer in age to the ones that we're trying to mentor.